My position is that despite the fact that Trump keeps Putin on a short leash and is constantly narrowing his physical space, I think that since one's own shirt is closer to the body, these sanctions would be absolutely appropriate and timely. Because today, this resistance from Kyiv towards Putin, as well as the ongoing resistance from the globalists together with Zelensky, is certainly delaying all the processes and all of Trump's plans to stop the war. Let me know if you can hear me well or not. Tatiana Vladi, good evening to you. Yes, hello there, Tatiana. I am truly glad to see you here tonight. So I am absolutely sure and firmly believe that these specific personal sanctions should indeed work effectively and achieve their intended goals. Trump has essentially prepared all the groundwork to move forward. We can hear and see you, Tatiana. Thank you very much. Trump organized the Arabs to lower the price of oil. Trump organized Europe to pay, to allocate 5% of the military budget. Besides that, he is now working to make Europe stop buying energy resources from Putin and the Kiribists altogether. He is definitely moving in that direction, so that, let's say, they would be more effective. All these sanctions were there, and without a doubt, personal sanctions would work just perfectly. And you also know what's happening now. Putin met with the communists plus Modi. The representative of India, the Prime Minister, was there, but today Modi has already written, Narendra Modi wrote that he deeply appreciates it, he wrote this on Twitter, and that he fully reciprocates President Trump's mood and the positive assessment of our relations. India and the United States have a very positive and promising comprehensive global strategic partnership. And what does this mean? That Modi didn't hesitate for long, and at this point is already responding to Trump with charming words. Trump, I'm with you, no questions, and so on. And I'll tell you why, because Modi, it's his third term in power, and according to the constitution there, in India, the Prime Minister can serve without any term limits. That's why the previous one, I think, was in power for 20 years. Modi has already been in power for 15 years. And at this point, for him to resist America, and you know how much business is now tied to America, that is, America is a very large market for India. So right now, at this moment, Modi has demonstrated some kind of a tendency towards the communists and the Egyptians, but at the same time, he already writes information that with Trump, everything will be fine, we're together. But Trump has now set a 50% tariff, and I think Indian businesses will now tell Modi, come on, solve this issue, because we might reconsider whether you should even lead this country. So I think here, now certain movements will definitely start 100%. So Trump made a statement, and this is also literally fresh news. US President Donald Trump said on Thursday that Europe must stop buying Russian oil. This is what we've been talking about, that he keeps tightening this noose around Putin's neck. Anatoly Pelesa, hi. Andrei Kirichenko, Lena Moskova from Odessa, Alla Orlova. Alla Orlova, I love seeing you. Alexander Leonidovich, let India and China trade. Well, of course, they can trade India and China, but still, America is the main market for India at the moment. And all the students, practically the majority of Indian students, study where? They study in America. This long-standing conflict between China and India is not going anywhere. It will always resurface because, if I remember correctly, in the 1960s, China took part of northern India, and there's still a territorial dispute there. So no matter how much Modi tries to show some kind of closeness to China, it's predetermined, it's not going to happen. So in this situation, Trump will win anyway, and so will America. And he will still make sure that India can also diversify its oil purchases through Arab countries and through America itself, because America always, oil and gas production is only increasing. And consider this process started only 6 months ago. And I think that by the end of this year and then next year, the oil and gas production here will be so large that it will be enough. So in reality, America will be in control of the situation. Plus, you know that right now there are US ships and submarines stationed in the Caribbean region to put additional pressure on Venezuela. And since Maduro has been declared wanted as a drug trafficker, and he's also accused of human trafficking, that's another thing they're attributing to him. There's a $50 million bounty on his head. So I think it might take a week, maybe a month. Right now, the situation is such that Trump will help the real president return, the one who was elected with 70% of the vote, and Maduro usurp power, using those voting machines and so on, counting the votes his own way, as they know how to do. By the way, these machines are used in many countries. I think that there will be a lot more information about reviewing all these elections in general, because if it is proven now that there was election fraud in the United States in 2020, I'm sure that questions will also be raised in other countries. That's over the last, I think, 15 years. These electronic machines have been used. That's why Trump has now issued an order. I think it will be established in Congress at the legislative level that voting can only take place on one day, usually Sunday, which would be declared a holiday. Voting would be done only by paper ballots. Mail-in voting would be excluded, and you could only vote with an ID that proves you are an American citizen. If Trump implements all these rules now, the Democrats will have zero chance of winning. zero chance of winning the election. Plus, the fact that Trump is bringing order to the big cities, and as a rule, big cities have always been a cesspool for the Democrat socialists. They have always used all administrative resources here to stay in power all the time. And the Democrats have been in Chicago for, I think, 70 years now. That is, they have practically destroyed this city. The same goes for Washington and the same for Los Angeles. But Trump, moving through the blue states, I think, by bringing in the National Guard, will restore order in America. It's strong. I'm sure people will like it because they are already tired of it. Mess. And they will vote more for Republicans. So Nikola Litvinenko, not in the industry, he will help in Russia. I don't want to know anything about it. But since India has arranged things well, it turns out that it buys oil from Russia cheaply, almost for free, then processes it and sells it to other countries as if it's their own oil and energy resources. But now, all of this whole scheme, Trump will wipe out completely, no doubt about it. And India, after all, will take the right position. The importance of oil reserves is still relevant for about another 20 years. How much longer can it last? Anatoly Piel. Well, Anatoly, as for the oil reserves, they may exist, but the question is who will become their owner? Because in any case, Trump's plan is that he doesn't intend to share with any multipolar worlds with Russia or China. He is still building a unipolar conservative world where there is no place for either the Kiev regime, Putin, or Xi the communist. That is, the time will come when it would be better to break it up into pieces, and in the end, these energy assets will be owned by certain corporate companies, and it's not out of the question that Trump will achieve having them pay reparations to Ukraine for what they've done here, for how much they've destroyed Ukraine. And in general, I think that when Trump restores order and stops the fighting, in the future, certain mechanisms will be put in place. I think that the UN, or rather that sham organization, will be replaced by a new League of Nations, in which it will be stipulated that if any country attacks another and claims some territory, starting a war, it will be punished through reparations within a very short time. This whole thing is a bacchanalia and the unleashing of war. All of this simply played into the hands of the socialists and the Democrats. And what kind of voting system does the US have? How could non-citizens have voted Nikola Litvinenko? It's complete chaos here, especially these last elections. In 2020, they were 100% falsified. Because they allowed illegal immigrants to vote, you could come without an ID. And even that Newsom, in California, he issued an order that if someone at the polling station asked for an ID, that person could get into trouble. This was simply done to falsify the elections. Well, you know that Trump changed the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. And by doing so, he once again made it clear that the world will still be unipolar, conservative, and will protect the Judeo-Christian religion, which made this world civilized. In other words, Trump is now practically putting at the forefront the principles of morality, common sense, freedom, and order. These are his slogans, which he will use to move forward and help, and for other countries as well to change the governments of their leaders and move in this direction. And he absolutely rejects it. This is inhumanity, and then this Satanism that has been present in recent years. There's simply no other way to call it. And he is putting a stop to chaos and violence. And what is war? It is chaos, violence, and disorder. And that's why it always benefits the socialists, because first they provoke this war, and then they simply take advantage of the situation, further strengthening their hold on power. And that's exactly what has happened now in Ukraine. Here's Tesla phone. Yes, hello. Trump has already made all the wrong decisions. It's time to make a single correct decision regarding ZRIP. Well, that's exactly what we call the stream. There should be personal sanctions against Putin and his inner circle, and also personal sanctions against Zelensky. And he is already very close to this issue because he understands that no matter how hard he tries to keep in touch with Putin, it's obvious that so many years and so many reasons have led to this war, and now it's difficult for Trump to resolve and sort it out in a short time. Moreover, all the telesocrats of all countries are definitely against Trump. Why? Because Trump brings transparency, freedom of speech, and openness to the structure of the state and governance, and this is something the telesocrats of the whole world strongly dislike. Because over the past 100 years, they all managed to get to the trough, created 2 or 3 parties that it was all for show, as if they were competing with each other, but in reality, that's how it is in almost every country. It was basically just a one-party system. Only in China is it a strict one-party system, while in other countries it's just an imitation of having multiple parties. But now the situation is changing, especially in Europe. Trump has gotten involved in the process, I'm sure, and Elon Musk is involved too. You can see that Elon Musk shares information on the X platform every day, which supports this alternative in Germany. There's quite a powerful leader there. And by the way, I think on YouTube, he posted her speech on his channel where she just tore Merz apart like it was nothing. Because all this imitation of socialists, Christian socialists, demo socialists, they're all in cahoots with the Greens and this whole globalist mafia. And with one goal, they're super. They organize big projects, whether it's climate change, the green agenda, or something else. Motives just to rob the population afterwards. And by robbing under the guise of all these projects, in the end, they once again have money for the next elections. And so this closed loop keeps repeating itself over and over. That's why he's now on the verge of adopting these personal sanctions. I'm absolutely sure of it. And Trump said basically that America won the First World War and the Second World War single-handedly. And clearly, as we know from history, the Soviet Union without Lend-Lease, it would never have won the war against Hitler, because on one side there was a fascist, and on the other side, a communist fascist. And this slaughter was essentially between two fascists, you could say, because the people were dragged into this situation and so many lives were lost. It was all because of fascist communist rule, because both were the same. Sometimes people say that some are right-wing, some are left-wing. No, all fascists, socialists, communists, they're all on the left side. The right side might be libertarianism, or the conservative wing, or the Republican wing. That can be considered right-wing. Everything else, that's all. And when leaders of common sense, like Trump, like Nayib Bukele, like Javier Milei are called ultra-right, that's all a deliberate information trick for people to portray and present them as extremists. But in reality, both Javier, Nayib Bukele, and Trump want to build a society where there is freedom of speech, transparency, and where the actions of the authorities are visible. And there will be feedback, meaning the authorities will need to be held accountable. Because over the last 100 years, starting from Woodrow Wilson, you could say things have only gotten worse. And from time to time, these deep socialists would come to power in America. And you could say that if they hadn't constantly interfered in the economy over all these years, then the first wars might not have happened at all. So many people wouldn't have died, and the economy might already be 10 times different from what it is today. And there wouldn't be just one Elon Musk, but thousands. Hello, Sergey Belly. Glory to Ukraine, Diane Taylor, glory to the heroes. Lying Macron, a bunch of cushy positions in NATO, a Chernobyl super leader. But here, Macron, this parasite, this so-called solidar, I don't even know what other epithets to come up with for him, because he's such a social scoundrel who has caused so many problems for France, so many problems for Europe. And most likely, he's trying so hard to promote himself across Europe, organizing all sorts of meetings with Zelensky and so on, because most likely he's aiming to the European Union, to that Brussels establishment we've been talking about, which is a socialist superstructure that needs to be thrown out once and for all, straight into the trash, because they've created this kind of superstructure for themselves, one that comes up with all these grand projects just to leech off Germany, France, and Italy. In other words, those countries that are highly productive and generate a lot just to take their money and use it, then for their own power. Tatiana Skueva, thank you for your broadcast. You're welcome. Ravel, Trump is a show-off. Macron is a liar. Macron is a scoundrel. I think that the entire history of France will be reconsidered again. When I think this is for retirement, whoever comes to power, I think there will be a lot of investigations about what was done in France, how he robbed this country, how he Islamized it, how he brought it to such a state that France became dangerous to live in. As of today,